Good morning, everyone. My name is Brax Montier with UFLTV, and I'm here interviewing Jonathan. Will you introduce yourself for everyone?
Yeah, thank you. Jon Bass with First Class Real Estate Partners here in Holiday, Utah, serving all parts of Utah, but primarily the big three counties here in the north.
Wonderful. Well, I have a couple of questions for you as it relates to real estate. So let's hop right in. What are the very first steps you advise any seller to take before listing his or her or their home? And how might those steps become even more important if the sellers are in the middle of a divorce?
Yeah, super good question. How I navigate that is typically three items. Commitment being the first one. Selling a home is a very emotional decision, specifically moving on from a property where many memories have been made and many things have happened. The process of transacting is a bit unpredictable and it really requires strict attention to nuances. So, commitment to the process is one of the biggest things that I advise them to be ready for. The stuff that we can absolutely count on, and then just to be ready for anything that comes out of nowhere, which very well could happen. Solutions-based decisions are my guiding light when it comes to, helping my folks make the proper decision in a real estate transaction. We want to stay in a solutions-based mindset the entire time. And it's a helpful way to navigate the transaction, knowing that the preferred results await in the outcome. And so we always want to be thinking, this is where we are and this is where we want to be. So no matter what comes up, let's keep the solutions flowing to get to the eventual outcome. Lastly, communication's key. I have really gone through and structured a lot of my communication to make sure that my sellers and buyers know that they will be getting updates from me that are thorough yet succinct and to the point. When it comes to, helping folks who are going through a divorce, it's, even more imperative to have a structured communication expectation, whether that is just emails of updates sent every week that both parties get, both owners get, that has nothing different between the two, to, individual conversations to help them understand what's in front of them and what the eventual co-decision will have to be. The commitment step is kind of taken out of the equation since they're compelled to sell a property in a
Yeah.
divorce sometimes. But the solutions-based decisions would probably come into play even more predominantly as they think about where they are and where they want to be.
Yeah. Well, especially in a divorce when emotions run high all of the time and maybe the parties don't communicate very well. So being committed to a solution-based kind of transaction and process would really help that along because you can really focus, say, look, you guys might not like each other, but we're trying to get this house sold. So let's focus on that. And that could probably
Mhm.
grease some wheels. Um, what can people do who are trying to sell their home do to help their real estate agent in that process?
This is such a great question because a lot of agents will say the standard things: clean your house, declutter, be sure
Yeah.
to be ready for showings, be sure for that the neighbors aren't out there watering their flowers in their underwear. Have a
Yeah.
conversation and make sure everything's ready to go. That's the easy stuff. I tell everybody to prepare their nervous system because this is potentially going to be a long and arduous process. And, in the case where you're going through a divorce as well, it's another layer of stressors and a whole big project to navigate in the midst of any kind of mediation and kids and what have you. So prepare your nervous system and be ready to make quick and sometimes highly emotional decisions. The key is really to remain collected as possible. So for what you can do to make my job easier and allow me to serve you easier and better and more effectively is to just be ready for anything. And through the month or 45 days or however long it takes to work through a transaction to sell this home, really trust the professionals that you've hired to guide you through. Because I can take care of everything. You just got to be ready for anything.
Good. What would affect that sales price? What are things that could come up that would
Yeah.
change that number?
Yeah. So sales in this market are so predictable. Two things affect the sales price of a home: condition and location. Location is key because in any given neighborhood, there is basically a ceiling of what a house in that neighborhood can potentially sell for before you get into the prices of a different neighborhood that has possibly bigger houses, better houses, whatever have you. So pricing is going to be, it's always going to be based on location first and foremost because there are areas that will cap. And then, of course, it's going to be highly based on condition. If you give buyers less things to worry about when they walk through the door, the condition is good,
Mhm.
And if the condition is poor, then there's obviously a price that will make sense that you have to be kind of realistic about. So price is entirely hinges on condition and location in this current Utah market.
Okay. And then what for the market, how long does a house normally stay on the market? What affects that process?
Yeah. And so that one is really just price and condition. You take location out of it, that is what it is. But what you can actually control after, you go on the market and how long it stays on the market is price and condition. So start going back to condition, the process of getting it on the market obviously involves cleaning, decluttering, and things kind of organized to help you make a quick exit to accommodate showings. That's all stuff that I guide my clients through. But the condition of the home goes past that. How does it actually smell every day when you leave? How does it look from the outside? How does the street look? All these things come in to the overall condition of what these buyers are going to be purchasing. And then price is really the other factor of how long they stay on the market. People just won't overpay in this market currently.
That's good to know, especially for divorcing couples whose budgets are already tight. Um,
Yes.
what is the process for preparing a house to be sold?
Yeah. And, I just mentioned it, but declutter everything. We all have lives strewn about our houses, and our lives are nobody's business when they're walking through and viewing this as a potential place for them to live. So declutter the personal stuff, declutter the things that just take up space that's unnecessary, make it look like any kind of model home you've ever seen in your life as much as possible. And then keep it clean until it sells. We do an open house, we get some folks through in the first couple of weeks, and maybe maybe showings die down for a week or so, which is, these last couple of weeks here in Utah, school has started statewide, specifically in Salt
Yeah,
Lake area here. I think almost every district in the Salt Lake area is starting today. Over these last few weeks, showings at listings have been very slow, simply because everybody's getting folks are getting their kids ready for school and they have other stuff on their mind. It'll pick up again next week, right? But for
yeah.
right now, it's slow. And when those slow times come, those slow weeks, you got to still keep it decluttered, clean, be ready for anything. And what I really tell folks, especially people who have children or pets, that they have to secure, is let's set up a plan and have everything organized very quickly for you to leave the house for some showings. So, while preparing the house is important, being prepared to step out for half an hour to accommodate a showing when you have maybe a 15-minute notice, the more people you can get into the house, the more likely it's going to sell sooner. So we need to make sure that that's prepared as well.
Okay, well, how can people increase the value or asking price for their home before selling it?
Yeah, and really, this is the conundrum that a lot of folks really run into is how do you increase the price? Well, it's kind of tough. You can do a big remodel project. Usually, kitchens and bathrooms are going to have the most ROI. I'll talk about that in a minute. But the real question is, how fast can you get an offer? Because within the first 21 days, an offer is going to be pretty close to asking price, which means you priced it correctly and the condition of the home shows very well.
Okay.
The best way to make the most money on a real estate transaction is to get an offer quickly after you've listed. That's where you have the most leverage as a seller and you don't have to give up much of anything in negotiations. So, project wise, not a whole lot can be done to really up the value that's going to take a small amount of time to get you a bigger return. However, conditioning the house to be ready to show and making the showings accommodatable and pricing it correctly are going to get it sold fast and for the best terms.
Okay. Um, what are the least time-consuming and expensive ways to do this? If you can't swing a big remodel job, what can you do to help bump up that price?
Absolutely. I mean, going to market at a top dollar price for what you have. Cleaning again, I can't say that enough, but past that, look for the cosmetic repairs. This is super important because buyer dissonance is at an all-time high right now. The littlest thing in your home, a scratch in the middle of a cabinet, may give them dissonance about the entire kitchen, a chip in a tile where it's super noticeable. Little things like this can sometimes add up. Now, are you going to go fix absolutely every single one of them? No. Look for the ones that stand out. Make those cosmetic repairs. Holes in walls, damaged doors, cabinets, counters just come to mind. Functional repairs, though, are also a very important piece. When you have doors that don't close or open properly, they stick, like a bedroom door sticks. It gives buyers dissonance. This is going to be their kids' room. They don't want to fight to get the door open here, right? Easily fixable, but don't even give them that as a dissonance factor. Windows that are inoperable, I see those a lot. Try to see if you can get a licensed handy person over to fix your inoperable windows so that people can comfortably open and close them, get air through. Old and poorly functioning toilets that constantly run in a beautiful home that's otherwise clean and shows nice. Those could be a buyer dissonance factor, and leaky faucets of any kind should always be fixed as far as functional repairs.
Okay. And then regardless of, your time or the money, what provides the biggest bang for your buck in order to, raise the price?
Yeah, and this is just based purely on my experience as a realtor over the
Okay.
last number of years. I have found that remodel kitchens are always going to bring the biggest bang for your buck. People will pay more for a new, nice, clean looking, functional kitchen, and your home will likely sell faster. So you can always guarantee an ROI on a kitchen remodel. Um, Remodel bathrooms will come in second. We think about where we spend a lot of time in the house, a kitchen and a bathroom. Those are two spaces in a house that get a lot of use and provide more or less a sanctuary away from the madness sometimes for any given occupant of the house. So, you say you go add a rain shower and body jets into a stand-up shower, which is pretty easily done. You just run a pipe up and overcut a hole in. It's pretty easy to do. Now
Yeah.
that's somebody's, Zen shower. They're going to like that a lot. They're going to want to pay more for a shower like that because they know the benefit of having a nice shower every day for as long as they live there. So you really can't go wrong with those two types of remodels. It really just matters on how fast you want to sell the home and what your budget is to improve these areas.
Open houses and showings can be very stressful in the best of circumstances. What can a divorcing couple do to make the process smoother when emotions can be running high?
Yeah, this is a great question. This would definitely fall under a strategy of, just a collective purpose of accommodating showings into the home to get it sold as fast as possible. If we don't let people into the home, it's just not going to sell fast. You have to let people tour your home. So, for staging, first of all, staging in a home that's occupied is typically not always needed, especially if people are able to clean up, declutter, and make the place presentable. Staging an empty house, I would absolutely recommend it in most cases. It does help it sell faster. Again, going back to giving buyers less dissonance. That's really what staging accomplishes. Open houses, showings, for folks who need to be kept in the loop and on the same page, the local MLS gives us tons of tools to help make sure that both parties in the house approve showings. And, obviously communication between myself and another agent and saying it's occupied. One of them's going to approve the showings. We have tons of tools that help that be a seamless process. But the communication piece is going to be imperative there. So, individually letting people know there's a showing or collectively or whatever the situation is, you have to strategize around the best way to communicate with these owners, especially if they're going through a divorce. That's going to help make things smoother is to stick to a plan of communication.
Absolutely. What kind of common pitfalls can people fall into when they're trying to sell their home?
So the oldest one in the book and the one that I still see all the time is listing the home that does not fall in line with what the market can bear. If you're a stock enthusiast, what a support level is, and there's a support level for homes. And if you price above that support level, you're going to be sitting on the market. And there's really a small window to hit the most ideal price, or else you end up chasing the market, which is a very, very tough thing to do, even if you're not going through a divorce. It makes things a lot more stressful. So the most common pitfall is thinking your house is worth more than what buyers will actually pay for it. And I'm here to show you what buyers will pay for it. And the decision is really yours. If we overlist, it's just going to sit. If we list it right in line, it's going to sell and move you on to the next phase of your life.
Yeah. Um, when two owners aren't really speaking much because of a pending divorce, what are some ways you've successfully dealt with co-owners whose communications are strained?
Yeah, again, this really falling back on the communication strategy that's outlined at the start. It's got to be structured in a way that everybody agrees on so that nobody's tripping over, seeing communication that they're not understanding or they think is one-sided. It's just got to be very direct and objective information to both sides in this case. You would be the expert on this, but I have heard that sometimes just seeing email that's addressed to both owners going through a divorce can be triggering when you see both people's names up as a salutation because you're going through a divorce. Something like that could be raw and invoke emotions. So it's got to be really drilled down to just the facts. And here's the report of the facts for you both. And if you aren't speaking to each other, I'm just going to convey this in a way where it's like a white labeled update. No names, no references of any kind, just here's where we're at. And both sides got the exact same update so that decisions can be made. That's typically how I see people go about it, and it's usually the most effective.
Especially in a situation where maybe there's a protective order in place and the parties aren't legally allowed to communicate, or maybe they can't communicate without fighting. And so being able to just say, here's the update, without getting into it with anybody, probably helps that process along a lot.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. What are the ways an agent handles situations where sellers disagree about what asking price to set or whether to accept an offer for purchase?
Yep. And I'm a classically trained realtor. By that, I mean I was trained at a big brokerage. And, for what it's worth, they have really good proven, processes to handle these types of situations, whether it's a divorcing couple or not. But, there's a strategy to settle every disagreement. And in pricing, knowing the bottom line that the sellers have to have for the economics of their next move to work are imperative. And it's obviously something we discuss and dive into early. But then there is that price again that buyers are willing to pay for the property. So the difference between those two numbers is really all you have to play with. And it comes down to usually, I don't know, 30,000, maybe 25, sometimes up to 50. You're that far away on pricing something correctly. And you're also that far away from making a deal work if you got an offer. That's kind of how I see it in what I've been doing lately in the market. So, obtaining the highest amount of the difference between what you need to move forward and what buyers will actually pay for the home is really how you drive people into a solutions-based decision on pricing. And then for accepting an offer, the conversation really does revolve around expectations of the terms and again, bridging the gap between where the parties currently are and where they will be when the transaction settles. So, an example would easily be if we accept this offer today, the parties will have this amount of dollars by this date. And furthermore, the property will be sold, a large item in the divorce process will be resolved, and you both may know where you're going next. So there's a lot of things that can be solved if we can agree about price and whether to accept an offer.
Okay. And in your experience, do sellers who present a united front, even in the middle of, their personal disagreements or whatever issues they're dealing with in the divorce, do they tend to get much better results in negotiation, or does it not really matter?
I believe United Front always comes out on top. Yes.
Okay.
So if you have a common goal and you're able to put feelings aside and make a decision based on numbers, based on really just business, nothing personal, nothing emotional, taking emotion completely out of this as best you can, and just making decisions united, knowing that you both are going to move on separately with the proceeds of this sale as your basis can usually help to unite people enough to at least make united decisions, which do go a long way.
Right. And once an offer is accepted, there's still a lot to do before closing. What does that entail? And what is your advice on keeping that process on track when personal tensions are really high or they might derail the entire process?
Yeah. And so, the tensions are high for everybody as you go through a transaction and move through escrow. The weight of my clients on me, I take it, very seriously, and I want to make sure that I mitigate any pain during that time because I know just how many things are moving behind the scenes that have to fall into place for this thing to come together. And so my job, especially when things are getting more tense on all sides, is to remind them of the nervous system that they prepared themselves for and staying entrenched in solutions-based thinking while we negotiate this offer, which is a side quest of the big divorce picture, but a very important one, and one that, the quality of the solutions at any level of outcome, really can't be affected by personal tensions at any time in the transaction. So, it's really just me going, if we can keep it together for this much longer, another day or two, tomorrow, if we can keep it together, everything's going to be done. You guys will be moved on from this and brighter futures await. So you just have to remind them that this solution is almost here and we just got to bear down and get it done.
Absolutely. Well, that was my last question. Where can people find you who are going through a divorce and would like to sell their property?
Yeah, I would absolutely love to talk. You can text me, and my number is 801-597-2368. You can email me as well at Jonathan's full name, so JONATHANBASS, like the fish, at the number one ST class RE.com. Hopefully you got all that, but I'll send it over to you. The number is probably the best way to get in touch with me. Shoot me a text and just let me know when you have availability to talk about your situation. We can jump on a call and I can see if I can help. But I do exist to serve, and I can help guide you through this part of your divorce very easily and seamlessly if you'll let me.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much.